the shift from sensory integration, where I was just looking on an adaptive motor responses, DIR has now led me to really thinking about that social emotional development. And that's what I want to sort of give to parents, that it's not just fixing the sensory, but it's really supporting the overall development of the child and you and your relationship with your child.
Welcome to Tilt Parenting, a podcast featuring interviews and conversations aimed at inspiring, informing, and supporting parents raising differently wired kids. I'm your host, Debbie Reber. My guest this week is Rosemary White, an occupational therapist trained in neurodevelopmental therapy, sensory integration, and DIR Floortime. Rosemary owns and operates pediatric physical and occupational therapy services in Seattle, Washington, where we were lucky enough to cross paths as Asher went to Rosemary's practice for a number of years. And I just have to say, I look back on that time as a truly magical one of learning and growth for our family. Rosemary is passionate about working in collaboration with parents and finding the joy in supporting each parent and their child in their relationship with one another to promote development. Rosemary is a Profectum Foundation senior faculty member and has taught, consulted, and provided supervision to professionals in the U.S., as well as Canada, Europe, the U.K., Turkey, Israel, South Africa, Brazil, Uganda, Taiwan, Peru, Ukraine, Russia, and Australia. During this conversation, Rosemary explains what DIR Floortime therapy is and what it looks like in practice, the involvement of parents in their child sessions, why some kids just need to move and what is really going on when they do, and how we can push to get DIR Floortime into more schools. I love Rosemary's approach of recognizing the individual and tailoring the approach to best support each child and their family. Before I get to that, as you may know, I've been working to create some self-study programs for parents and caregivers who are looking for specific support. And last fall, I shared my first new mini course called the Emergency Reset. And this week, I am excited to announce something I've been working on for months. I have just launched a self-study version of my Differently Wired Club. So this is a 12-month program, each month focused on a different theme, featuring videos, worksheets, accountability challenges, deep dive resources, and weekly emails to keep you on track. I try to take the best of the club and reformat it in a way that works for busy parents who don't have time for live calls and engagement, but would benefit from the club content. To check it out, visit courses.tiltparenting.com or go to Tilt Parenting and click on Courses in the main menu. Thanks so much, and now here is my conversation with Rosemary. Hey, Rosemary, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Debbie. It's wonderful to be here.
I've been wanting to do this for a couple of years. I'm just realizing, I think we saw each other at the Profectum conference maybe 2.5 years ago.
2019.
Wow. Well, anyway, I'm so happy this is happening. You are someone who has been in my life peripherally for a very long time. But I would love if you could take a few minutes. So I've already read your bio, but if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself, what you do, and maybe your personal why for the work that you do.
Well, I'm an occupational therapist and have always had a passion of working with children and their families. And so even at a very young age, I wanted to become an OT and really was fascinated by the forming relationships with children and their families, or even when I was in training with adults who had strokes and other neurological disorders. So I think I've put relationships in the forefront, but I also really am passionate about neurobiology. And so really trying to understand how we take in the world and what it makes it contributes to us being the unique beings who we are. And so, as a very young therapist, when I graduated, I went to the UK and did a graduate course in the treatment of children with cerebral palsy. And so I was passionate about that. And then I became more and more well-versed in sensory integration and had the good fortune to work with both of the individuals who developed those theoretical models. And so what was really powerful about that was it sort of gave me a theory and something solid behind just the work and playing with children and their caregivers. And so, as I moved on and started working more and more, I started to sort of see how when we work, we were really supporting children and their families, not just to coordinate their bodies better or take in the world, but really it was a platform to move forward into social interaction. And so for the last 21 years, I have become involved with Profectum and the work of Stanley Greenspan and Serena Wieder, which really sort of pulled the motor and sensory development into what I think is the most important thing. And that's really how we are able to be individuals who have successful relationships with one another. So because it's through relationships that we really learn and grow, no matter what you're trying to learn. We never really learn in isolation. We learn in relationships with others. And sometimes that relationship might be just a one-on-one relationship, or it might be in a group.
Yeah. And so full disclosure for listeners. So Rosemary White, when Asher was very young, maybe 4, and someone said the words sensory processing disorder to me. I read Carol Chronowitz's book, The Out of Sync Child. And then your name, Rosemary, kept coming up because I was living in Seattle at the time. Oh, you got to go to Rosemary White. Oh, Rosemary White. So we did. We were on a waiting list for quite a while. And then we got in and we ended up working with a therapist who I still just love and adore, Chris Johnson, for many years. And there's so many aspects of that time that have stayed with me and that I think were so unexpected and have really kind of changed how I parent. And the relationship piece is a big part of that. I remember sitting, just having the worst day, right? And showing up to OT. And then Chris was checking in on me and she was kind of explaining what she was doing and looping me into the play. And I wasn't expecting that. Can you talk more about that relationship with parents? Because I think so often we just like, okay, you do this with my kid and then let me know how it goes.
Well, I think it's really very important that, if we're seeing an OT for an hour, a child seeing an OT for an hour out of 7 24/7s, that's not much. And unless we include the parent and make it a collaborative process. So I'm not going to move into do this, do that, or here's your series of activities to do. We want to really make it a dynamic process. So, when I had my first private practice, which was in California, the parents were always sitting in on the sessions. And at that stage, I was doing more of the direct therapy and feeling that the parents could learn through observing. But as I became more and more involved with DIR Floortime, it became much more of a collaboration with the parents. And that it was the child and the parent who were the ones interacting. And I'm there in a way in the sidelines or sometimes as the third person, and we're really supporting this flow of interactions. And, things about that are, each one of us processes things in a different way. So we have to tailor our interactions according to that individual. So it may be that you need to slow your pace down. Or I was just working telehealth yesterday with a lovely family with a little girl who's 3, and really mum was doing this lovely interaction of, she was in mum's lap and mum was tickling her and just bringing her hands up her trunk to tickle her face. And the pacing is so important that then she can feel that sense of, oh, mummy's hand's coming up. And the information comes in and she starts to know, I know what's going to happen. And that's like you start to make sense out of the world and predict what's going to happen. So some of those early games, like This Little Piggy, or, there's one from Australia, Round and Round the Garden, Like a Teddy Bear, One Step, Two Step, Tickly Under There. So we think about all of those games are about relating with your child, but it's also that your child is starting to say, Mummy's or Daddy's interacting with me, and I know what's going to happen. So you transfer that to being 12, and I'm taking in what's going on around me, and I'm able to take in the sights and the sounds and the action of the world and make a prediction about what's going to occur. And then I can adapt accordingly. So when I look at development, I look at it as this continual process, and my passion is to support social interactions.
So fascinating. So you mentioned DIR Floortime, and that is something that, I had never heard of it before. And it's often brought up in my Tilt Together group as people are getting information about their kids, maybe being autistic or having sensory issues, and they get recommendations for different types of therapy. DIR Floortime is the one most parents are like, this is the one. So can you tell us more about what that actually means and what it looks like in practice?
Well, the acronym DIR stands for it's a developmental approach that is really considering the individual profile of the child and the caregiver, and that it is relationship-based. So that's the D, the I, and the R. But in a way, it's a relationship-based approach to treatment that is really tailored to the individual profile of the child. And I'll explain that a bit, to support what we call the functional emotional development. So we're thinking about relationships, and everybody's relationship is different. So we have to really understand those rhythms of the relationship. The I is talking about the individual profile. So how the child and the caregiver take in sensory information, the sights and the sounds and the action of the world around them, and also their own body as well too, what we experience in our own body, our actual physical abilities, our motor control, and also what we call motor planning. So I can have an idea. I then will have that idea. Then I have to sort of access my image of my body to be able to say, okay, in order to make this idea or goal come to fruition, I have to organize my body in a way that's going to sequence to be able to be then to execute it, but also to be able to adapt my plan. So and I'll give you an example of this is, say I wanted to bake a cake. Well, I could think about, okay, I'd really love to make a chocolate mousse. So then I'm going to think about, well, what do I have in terms of the ingredients? So that would be the planning. And then what step am I going to need to do first, second, or third? And so I have to think about the sequence of what I'm going to do. And then I have to think about, well, how am I going to actually physically myself put these ingredients together? And then I start to put it all together, and I realize that maybe I don't have, let's see what, I'm dreaming of my daughter just made a chocolate mousse, but she uses the aquafaba from garbanzo beans because she can't use eggs. So there she's adapting the recipe accordingly, right? So I may not have eggs, so I'm going to go and open a can of garbanzo beans to use that fluid to be able to make the eggs. And so then say I'm making it, and I'm whipping it so fast that some of the ingredients spill out. Then I'm going to have to, capture the bowl a little bit. So we're constantly adapting. So that might be me making a chocolate mousse. But what if I was interacting with another child and we were both going to play chess, and we're getting out the chessboard? Then I'm going to have to organize my actions in relation to my partner. Or, I run summer camps, and so we do a lot of supporting social interaction that way, and it's supporting children as they're on a climber and they're going up on the climber, but they have to take in what's going on around them. Or it could be, and so we might use our affect to go things like, oh, here comes Johnny. So that you're using your affect to help the child who may be really focusing on what they're doing to be able to go, oh, somebody's coming close. How do I go to adapt to that too? So, there's that piece too. So I've sort of digressed a long way, but having the parents involved in the sessions from the very beginning is really powerful, because we're really sort of sharing our knowledge in terms of sensory processing, motor control, motor planning, communication, and being able to help them develop those beautiful rhythms of interaction with their child. And I have to say that it's a very strength-based approach. So we're looking at the strengths of the child to really be able to access those strengths to support the challenges. So it's not coming in and saying you're failing at this, you're failing at that, you're failing at da-da-da. It's much more about, this is what I see you and your child in terms of that interaction. When you come in very slowly and you're just, drinking in what he's doing, you can just see that light up and what we call that gleam in his eye. That was beautiful. Parents want to hear what they were doing that was beautiful, not like, okay, you need to stop doing this and you need to stop doing that. It's much more about, that was a beautiful moment, because that's what you come away with afterwards.
Gosh, I'm being flooded with memories right now. I love the strengths-based approach. That's, certainly what I believe, and what at Tilt Parenting, that's really the core of so much of what I'm hoping to share with parents, is to start with the strengths. And I do want to just give a shout out to Mona Delahook, who has been on the show. She'll be on the show actually the same season as this interview, talking about her new book, Brain Body Parenting. But I met Mona at the Profectum conference, and that's when I was introduced to her work. And I hear so much of that. Look at the individual, that child that we have, and how important that is, and the playfulness in which all of this work happens. I have a question then about tools. I'm thinking, when I first went with Asher, again, I think that they were 4 or 5, and it was like a whole new world to me. I was like, oh my gosh. First of all, I didn't even understand what we were doing. I didn't understand what proprioception was, or that there were tactile sensory things going on. And I also didn't know, I'm like, well, those are some interesting stretchy hammocks and, different fabrics. There are just so many tools. Can you talk about some of the types of tools that you rely on, and maybe give us an example of one or two, and how they support our kids' development?
Okay. But then this sort of comes from my sensory integration background. And so it's not so much the tools themselves as it is how we relate to the child and the caregiver with those materials. So you may have a child who, even though they move around, they don't have a very clear map of their body. So if you just, all your listeners, just close their eyes and you can picture yourself. I can picture myself with my eyes closed, that I'm sitting in a chair and that I've got my legs crossed. I'm not looking, but all the messages inside my body come up to this motor part of my cortex that give me this updated map. Now, some children that we work with, if you look at now Carol Kranowitz's book, The Out of Sync Child, what we're really talking about there is that all of the sensory systems are firing at the same time. And they have what we call this beautiful interconnectivity. So my vision talks to my body, which talks to what I'm hearing, and it comes together. But what if one of those, or a number of those sensory systems one was lagging a millisecond behind the other, which is what the research has shown us for some children? Then how are we going to create an environment that really sort of increases that awareness of the body? So we might set up that hammock. I have a lot of, I have hammocks that I bought in Brazil. So they're those lovely big cloth hammocks that individuals in Brazil sleep in. And it may be that a child and their caregiver might get inside that and then wrap themselves up so that you're forming this beautiful connectivity, but you're also mapping the child's body to give more fuel to that proprioceptive or muscle and joint fire to marry what we're feeling from our gravity receptors and from vision, but also tied in with emotion. So you're doing that. Or it might be that, some children, really need to move. It really helps their body feel organized. And when they do move, they're able to organize their thoughts. So instead of saying, would you stop moving? We might do things like, I notice when you move around, you're sharing your ideas in such a great way. I can follow it. So you're acknowledging this is what's important for an individual. Like, I use my hands the whole time when I'm talking. If somebody told me, put your hands down and keep them down, my thought process is going to be a little bit more disorganized. So we want to really highlight those strengths and notice what it supports in terms of development.
We'll be right back after this quick break. Maybe I've watched too many seasons of The Amazing Race, but every time I have to go somewhere on the subway, I treat it like a competition. It's all about making the right gut decisions about which route will get me there the fastest. Sometimes those decisions get me where I'm going early, and other times my gambles don't really pay off. Probiotics can't help with most gut decisions, but if your gut needs a little support, Ritual has your back. Their Synbiotic Plus, a 3-in-1 supplement, has clinically studied prebiotics, probiotics, and a postbiotic to support a balanced gut microbiome. I've been using Synbiotic Plus for about 6 months now, and it's become a core part of my morning routine. I take the mini capsule every morning while making my way through my inbox, whether I'm at home or I'm on the road, because it doesn't need to be refrigerated. And the capsule itself is delayed released, which helps it survive the harsh conditions of the upper GI tract for delivery to the colon, and that's exactly where we want it to go. Ritual invested in a study modeling the human colon, which showed that Synbiotic Plus significantly increased microbial diversity and the growth of beneficial bacteria. There's no more shame in your gut game. Synbiotic Plus and Ritual are here to celebrate, not hide your insides. Get 25% off your first month for a limited time at ritual.com/tilt. Start Ritual or add Synbiotic Plus to your subscription today. That's ritual.com/tilt for 25% off. During this month of planning and organization for big transitions, rhythms and routines have been absolutely essential for our physical and emotional well-being. So Green Chef nights are reliably and predictably a good night. We know the ingredients will be fresh and prepped, the instructions easy to follow, and the meal delicious. We're all still talking about last week's turkey tacos with mango chimichurri sauce, refried beans, and Monterey Jack cheese. Green Chef contributes to a healthy lifestyle with easy and delicious menus like fresh seasonal salads and grain bowls. And with over 80 weekly meal and market options, plus rotating options to suit a variety of lifestyles, whether Mediterranean, plant-based, calorie-smart, keto, protein-packed, gluten-free, there are always plenty of options to choose from. Whatever you select, you'll get farm-fresh ingredients, organic whole fruits and veggies, and premium proteins, all delivered straight to your door. I love those 4 words. Straight to my door. Oh, and one more thing I love about Green Chef, they have an app, which means it's easy to manage meal preferences and delivery from your phone if you want to. And I, for one, want to. I am in that mode where I'm making the most of little moments like waiting in line at the pharmacy or for the F train to pull into the station to tackle all of those to-dos. So the convenience of an app is key for me. Green Chef has a special offer for Tilt listeners. Go to greenchef.com/tilt50 and use code TILT50 to get 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months. That's 50% off plus 20% off your next 2 months when you use the code TILT50 at greenchef.com/tilt50. So I love the word organized, and that's something I remember Chris saying, which I didn't really quite grasp at the time, was that for Asher, spinning was a really organizing activity. For me, I can't even watch because I get motion sickness. But could you say a little bit more about what exactly is happening, like a child who needs to spin or to swing or do a movement? When you say organize, what's really happening?
Well, I think you're pacing it in a way that you bring about that interconnectivity. So it may be that a child who wants to spin, maybe what happens is around your ears, you have these very tiny organs called your vestibular organs, and they're like a gyroscope in your ear, and you have one on the left side and the right side. And that vestibular organ supports you to be able to know where you are in space, if you're tipping to the left or to the right, and if you're rotating. And when you stop, so that you're getting all of this information from little hair receptors inside there that give you millisecond by millisecond information about where your head is in space, where your body is in relation to the pull of gravity. And so one of the things that's important is that information from our muscles and joints comes up and it goes to a part of our brain called the vestibular nuclei. And there the information from those gravity receptors gets married, I like to use the word married, gets married or connected to the body information and also vision before you're even consciously aware. And so if one system is lagging a millisecond behind the others, then you may be trying to seek out ways to reorganize that. Now, a baby at about 18 months, when they've just learned how to walk and getting that rotation in their body, they will spin themselves around to be able to then stop and say in their mind, gravity, I've got more power over you. I'm not going to fall over. So I have a 21-month-old grandson, and the last month he's been spinning himself around, and then he'll stop and look at everybody like, do you see what I'm able to do? Okay, so he's organizing his body to be able to have mastery of it. So if things were not quite in sync for a child and that connectivity was not as robust, I may seek out doing those sorts of activities to really work towards having that mastery. And so, but the most important thing is not spin, but it's just like the baby does. He spins and then he stops so that you're really giving fuel to those systems and then you're stopping. So I might be playing with a parent and I'd say, okay, let's just go with the movement. I've got one child who loves to be in a hammock and dad to do like a really pretty wild ride. But then you want to stop. So you reorganize the system and he's able to have mastery of it.
Such a great explanation. Thank you for walking us through that. I'm wondering, what is the relationship between, for example, a sensory seeker or a child whose proprioception isn't completely connecting in the way that we'd like to see? Why is that a problem? I imagine most parents are coming to you because of intensity, behavioral challenges related to, and maybe they may or may not be autistic or have ADHD or other things. But what is the cost of not doing this work to integrate these systems?
Well, I want to come back to DIR because I think the D of DIR is really important. And that is that we're thinking about one of the most important early beginning for us as individuals is we're interacting today is sharing attention. We're both sharing attention around a common theme or interest, but we're also co-regulating, which means I'm altering my actions in relation to your responses. You're altering your actions in relation to mine. And so if you think about early development, co-regulation is the caregiver relating with that infant, but then it's the toddler, the preschooler, the elementary age school, the adolescent, adult. We're always reading the cues of other people to be able to know how I'm just going to tweak my interaction to help sustain the engagement. So that's the next thing, engagement, being able to be engaged across a wide range of emotions, to then be able to show my ideas and intentions and read the intentions of other people. So that's, again, the dance of social interaction, to then be able to stay in a long, continuous flow of interaction, to be able to feel power both physically and emotionally, and to be able to also engage in shared social problem solving, not necessarily just physical, but also how do I stay in that interaction. And then the next crucial part of that is being able to organize my actions and behavior in relation to the social environment, impulse control, being able to become a member of my home community, my extended family, my school community, and the greater social world. So those are the early developmental stages that actually are emerging in the first year of life, become more and more refined over experience. And then we move into more of a symbolic world where children now are able to move into play, which is representative of their own internal experience, emotional experiences, but also to explore through play how they're going to navigate social interactions, how they're going to navigate emotions. So, we have a lot of toys at our practice, which are things like dinosaurs and dragons. And we're not going to say, oh, they're only nice dragons. Children need to be able to, through their play, work through aggression. They have to work through navigating joy and frustration. And so the sensory integration world was really just that sensory piece of equipment that might really navigate or nurture the way to be able to get that body piece organized. But then we really want to think about how that body piece moves into social interaction as well as independence in my own self-help skills. So a child might come in under the auspice of the umbrella of sensory processing disorder, and the child may have challenges in terms of preferences of clothing. They may only want to wear sweats. Children come to our practice, and if you look along the hallway, because they'll take off their shoes, most of them have rain boots. A lot of them wear rain boots or Crocs because they feel more comfortable on their feet. So instead of saying, you've got to wear tennies, I'm going to say, you know what's comfortable on your feet. Or if they only want to wear sweats and don't want to wear jeans, you know what's comfortable. So it's a flip in that way. But the other part about it is that we want to look beyond. We want to look beyond. If you just take care of the sensory, everything's going to be fixed up. Because as you've so brilliantly written in your book and as you shared on Tilt Parenting, it's about the relationship and supporting that developmental process that really brings about, the ability to be able to really think about things in terms of being able to what we call have elaboration of ideas, to be able to have interactions and play that have a logical flow where we're able to reflect on what's going to be the outcomes of things and what are the motives of why people do things. Then moving up into higher levels, which you described so beautifully with Asha, in terms of thinking about multi-causal thinking, that things can occur for many different reasons, and then being able to appreciate that other people might have different perspectives to you. And then being able to, really think about not only different perspectives, but also value systems, the value systems of what I might prefer in relation to somebody else. So that's sort of a continuum in terms of the developmental levels. And so the shift from sensory integration, where I was just looking on and adaptive motor responses, DIR has now led me to really thinking about that social emotional development. And that's what I want to sort of give to parents, that it's not just fixing the sensory, but it's really supporting the overall development of the child and you in your relationship with your child.
We'll be right back after this quick break. Hey there, it's Debbie. I love making this show and sharing conversations about how to support our awesome neurodivergent kids. I've seen how even one little insight from an interview can spark a big shift in daily life. But I know that raising complex kids can be messy and lonely. And just when we think we figured it out, something comes up that boots us right back to feeling overwhelmed and stuck. That's why I've poured everything into creating a way for parents like us navigating complex parenting journeys to join together and chart a path that feels positive, hopeful, and doable. It's the brand new Differently Wired Club experience. In the club, you'll get personal support from me and other seasoned parent coaches, 6 live calls every month where you can connect and get your personal questions answered. the opportunity to learn directly from authors and experts like I have on this show, monthly themes for getting specific and tactical, an exclusive private podcast feed, and the best, most generous community of parents. Seriously, these folks show up for themselves and each other, and that right there is really everything, because it's a daily reminder that we're not alone. Our kids aren't broken, and we have totally got this. The recently rebooted Differently Wired Club is on a brand new platform with its very own iOS and Android app. It is such a great space. However you learn, whatever your style, no matter the ages, genders, and neurodivergent profile of your children, the Differently Wired Club can help you cultivate the positive shifts you're hoping for. Join us today by going to tiltparenting.com/club. That's tiltparenting.com/club. I hope to see you on the inside.
Hey, are you a parent of a teenager? Are you feeling overwhelmed about how to be what they need while also holding limits and boundaries that keep them safe? Are you tired of conversations that negate how messy this season of parenting is? Well, I've got you. My name is Casey O'Rourke. I am a positive discipline trainer, parent coach, and the host of the Joyful Courage podcast. Every week, I come to you with an interview digging into tough topics with experts I trust and solo shows that go deep into the personal growth and mindset needed to raise teens in a way that grows them into confident, capable young people. I am not afraid of getting real about the intersection of conscious parenting and the teen years, while also bringing in vulnerability, humor, and lightness. I'm walking the path with you and honored to serve. Listen to Joyful Courage on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you consume podcasts.
It's such an important thing. I think that, we can't talk about this enough on the show. I think so many parents come to my work and probably come to your center looking to fix problems, looking to address tricky behaviors, red flags at school. And this is such a, as you're describing it, it feels so hopeful and positive. And as you said, strengths-based. It's also not a quick fix. This takes a long time because we're really investing in the relationships, and parents are guided often in more behavioralist approaches to a lot of these challenges that they might be facing at school or at home. But really doing this deeper work, how the child benefits, I just can't, I don't think there's any, you can't even compare the two.
Mm-hmm. And I think the big thing is that it's really highlighted on what happens in development. And no two individuals' development is identical. And so we have to really think about how do we tailor the interactions to each individual too, and really listen to the parents. I think that's another really, really big thing too. If you look at it, when an infant's born, we're waiting for when they'll walk and talk. And that takes 12 months to 14 months to walk. So what's been going on in those first 12 months? And to talk, around 18 months, you're starting to hear some words, but what's been going on in those 18 months? And that takes a long time. And so we've got to think about that as everything takes a long time. It's not as though it's going to happen straight away, but if we're just looking at the moments to moments and supporting those moments to moments, you're creating this wonderful foundation. And I suppose for me, it's very exciting to read about Asha and you, but also I've had a number of clients that I started seeing when they were 3, and they all have just graduated from high school and going off to college. And, each one has had a different experience, and where they're going to is different, but it's just really lovely to see that, for a number of children, that's where it's the journey that helps them, that supports them to reach what their goals are as a graduate out of high school and moving forward. And some need more support than others, and we're going to be able to, work together to be able to find what is going to be the best road for each child.
I wanted to ask you, there was a conversation on, I think it was in my Tilt Together Facebook group, just about the limitations in terms of insurance. And the challenges, actually, I interviewed an expert in advocating for a universal design for learning in schools and really getting rid of ableism in schools and talking about the importance of getting new modalities accepted and used in schools over ABA or these approaches. Do you have a sense of where we are and what needs to happen in order for us to get DIR floor time more utilized in school systems?
Well, it's an interesting factor too, because there are a couple of schools that are DIR informed schools, and they're very much relationship based and really working a lot on terms of putting those foundations of shared attention, co-regulation to support regulation, engagement, intentionality. And so you're going to really make the curriculum or design the curriculum to meet the needs of the children as opposed to making the children meet the needs of the curriculum. So that's one thing. There has also been, in relation to insurance, Medicaid has been approved for DIR floor time in, New Jersey, Florida, I believe Illinois. And there's work in California with Regional Center. There's a lot of funding for DIR floor time as well too. But there's more. One of the beliefs is that if things move forward in terms of the work in New Jersey, and it gets, it's really shown that this work costs less because we're doing so much support to the parents than an ABA program, and the outcomes are more positive, then it will be more, hopefully, nationally covered. In Washington State, that's not the case, but, we're working as OTs, providing support for children and their families. So within, our clients are covered by their insurance. But if you're an educator or another professional, sometimes it's more dicey. What I was going to say, though, too, is that Profectum has just begun now a paraprofessional training. So we just did the first one in November, and basically where to be able to provide DIR floor time in home or in the schools, we want to train paraprofessionals. So this might be somebody who has a bachelor's degree or an associate degree, and we're going to be training them to be able to support children, understanding the individual profile, the developmental process. But they would then be under the supervision of an individual who has done at least what's called the level 2 training in DIR and Profectum. So I do training of level 1 and level 2 in Profectum, where we're getting deeper and deeper into understanding our work with children and their families. And so though the people who've graduated from CL2 would be able to then supervise paraprofessionals. And, in the state of Washington, for the last 21 years, I've been doing summer camps, and I've been training paraprofessionals in those summer camps, and it's wonderful. It opens up the door to this really exciting work for college students, and I even have high school students who've worked with me, and many of them have gone on to become special ed teachers, OTs, speech and language pathologists, psychologists.
That's great. And could you just take a minute and tell listeners what Profectum is? Because also parents can do training through Profectum, correct?
Yes, that's correct. Profectum began in 2011, and prior to that, we were with another group called ICDL, which was the Interdisciplinary Council for Developmental and Learning Disorders. And ICDL also does training as well too, and I'm actually a trainer, certified trainer on both of them. Profectum began under the guidelines of Serena Weeder, who is the clinical director, who developed DIR floor time with Stanley Greenspan. And then we have a faculty of psychologists, OTs, speech and language pathologists, educators, music therapists, and art therapists and others, individuals working with children with autism and other challenges in relating and communicating. And we developed a training module, which we began in 2011. And there's webinars within that are designed for the individuals in the courses to watch the webinars. Then we meet for discussion, reflecting on the webinars, and then we provide tutoring. But we also, through Profectum, have what we call the Profectum Parent Toolbox, which is a free resource. And you just go to profectum.org and register. And it's a series of webinars that were put together with Serena Wieder, Ricky Robinson, who is a pediatrician, and Serena Wieder is a clinical psychologist. Ricky Robinson is a pediatrician, with Sherry Khan, who's a speech and language pathologist, Monica Osgood, who's an educator who runs a wonderful school called Celebrate the Children, and then myself. And it's a series in 4 units that is 37 webinars with over 150 video clips. And it's designed to have like 30-minute webinars for parents to watch and reflect on in relation to their own child. And it has a workbook that goes with it as well, too. And it's been translated into Spanish and I believe Mandarin.
Such a great resource. Listeners, definitely check that out. I'll have links to all of this in the show notes pages. But I was really floored by the Profectum community when I had the honor of speaking at a Profectum conference and spending a few days with just the loveliest humans. Like, it was just such a great community, very supportive, very child-focused, play-focused, strengths-focused. So listeners, if this is kind of piquing your interest, definitely check out those resources. And I just wanted to ask, we do have a lot of international listeners. So you just mentioned translations. Is DIR Floortime used in other countries? Like, what is the international reach?
Broad, very broad. Throughout Europe, there are many individuals providing Floortime. I do a telehealth support group on Fridays since we began with COVID, and I have people who come from Argentina, Brazil, South Africa, Turkey, Ukraine, Italy, Malta. And then there's obviously I'm Australian. There's a whole DIR community in Australia. I'm currently training a group in New Zealand. I also work with a group in Singapore, Russia, Georgia. So yeah, it's in the UK, Wales, Ireland, as well too. So yes, there's many people from all over the world. And I've had the good fortune to go and work in Brazil, Peru, Taiwan, where else? Russia, Ukraine, Italy, the UK, and South Africa. That's another big group in South Africa as well too, and just all over the place too. So
that's fantastic. You're reminding me that I think last time we talked about getting you on the show, I think you were going to Russia or you had just come back. So that's so cool. As a way to wrap up, if there are listeners who are really interested in exploring this modality for their child, is Profectum the place to go? How can they tap into or find resources where they live for their child?
Well, I think there's a couple of ways to go too. Is Profectum is a great resource, and there is like a parent module as well too. The other, going to ICDL and looking there's directories for both of them, so you could go and put in the state that you live in and the area of where a resource would be. The other part about it is too, I think, just going to the Profectum toolbox and going through that is another resource, because we really wanted to design it. If you live in a place where there isn't a DIR Floortime professional, our goal was that you would be able to really go through this and think about your own child. So that's another resource as well too.
Fantastic. Well, Rosemary, I just want to say thank you. I'm just grateful for the work that you do. I'm so happy our paths crossed so many years ago. And when we left Seattle to go to Amsterdam, saying goodbye to Chris and to the other therapists we work with was one of the harder goodbyes that we had to make. It was like the end of such a magical time of learning and growth for our whole family. So I just wanted to say that, and thank you so much for everything that you shared today and the work that you do.
And I just want to say it's wonderful to be here, and just I have followed you since you were at the office, and just it was so exciting to read your book and to look at about your journey in Amsterdam and then coming back to the United States. And I don't know if you remember, but when Chris went on maternity leave, I treated Asher, which was a joy for me too. So it was fun. And treat is not the right word. I joined Asher
in the play. Yeah.
in the play. Yeah, I think that's a better way of saying it too.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Thanks again for coming by the podcast.
Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to the Tilt Parenting Podcast. If you want to dig deeper into this episode, check out the show notes page. Every episode has a dedicated show notes page on my website where you can get links to all the resources we discussed, read a transcript, and even easily go back and listen to key takeaways by using the chapters feature on the podcast player. To get to the show notes page for this episode, just go to tiltparenting.com/podcast and select this show. If you love this podcast and want to help cover the cost of its production, please consider joining my Patreon campaign. For as little as $2 a month, you can help cover the cost of the hosting platform for this show, my wonderful new editor and producer, Andrea, and more. It's so easy to sign up. Just go to patreon.com/tiltparenting to learn more, or click on the Patreon link on any show notes page. If you're into social media, you can follow Tilt Parenting at Tilt Parenting on Instagram and Twitter. Visit the Tilt Parenting page on Facebook, or join my Facebook community called Tilt Together. Lastly, please help this podcast stay visible and easily found by subscribing and leaving a rating or review on Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen to podcasts. Thank you so much. And that's all for this week. Stay safe, stay well, and take good care. And for more information, visit www.tiltparenting.com.
If you're a parent, I invite you to join us at the Mindful Mama podcast, where it's all about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. With sometimes hilarious and always thought-provoking experts and friends, at Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm Hunter Clark Fields, and I can't wait to see you there. Listen in to the Mindful Mama podcast.